I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Hey AfterBuzzers, welcome to A Podcast About JLo, where we talk about everything from JLo from A to Z, including the beginning of her career and to her entrepreneurship and her pop star celebrity success today. But first, I want to welcome my co-host today, Fallon. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's been a couple weeks since we've seen each other, but I'm glad to be back.
Excited to be back.
Ronnie, how you doing?
I believe I'm on the struggle bus today in terms of, I don't know if the phone is going to drop, but I'm going to do my best. Yeah.
It's all right. The phone will drop like the bass, so it's no big deal. We'll work around it.
That's right. Yeah. Other than that, I'm feeling good. Obviously, interesting week. So I would love to talk about it. Of course, the guidance of the through line of JLo is always nice. And it's always nice to talk to you too.
Likewise. Well, AfterBuzzers, we have been out of commission for the past 2 weeks for the fact that we've been standing in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement. That's very important to us here at AfterBuzz TV, as well as us fighting for a change in cause in today's society. Now, with that being said, we're going to take 10 minutes out of today's 10 minutes, even more, because we are very passionate about this subject that's going on in today's times and pushing forward into the future. We're going to focus on Black Lives Matter and some of the topics that are going on in today's headlines, and we're going to discuss them amongst ourselves between Fallon and Ronnie and myself, given that we all are a diverse panel and we're from different backgrounds. So let's get to it. Fallon, how are you feeling about the Black Lives Matter movement? What's going on in your mind? How are you feeling about everything, especially being in interracial marriage?
Well, first and foremost, I am Dominican, half Dominican, and I think, to really sum it up, Hispanics, we are Afro-Latinos, we are Afro-Latinas. So
Very true.
some people may not know that our heritage, Christopher Columbus dropped off the slaves in the Caribbean before he stopped and dropped them off in the US and the mainland. Mm-hmm. So I do consider myself an Afro-Latina. So I do identify with Black Lives Matter. Yes, I am married to an African-American, but I feel like I am considered an African-American too. They say in this country, even one drop, you're considered Black. And we also did the genealogy on my dad just to kind of, for his Christmas present, and for my mom, we did both of their genealogy. And, my dad came up 40% from the Congo Republic.
Wow.
Now, he was born and raised in the Dominican, came here at 14 years old. So, he's almost half Black. So yeah. I was just like, really, I felt like even more, convicted as an African-American myself. So I just wanted to put that out there because some people who are Hispanic or some people who look at Hispanics, they don't identify as being Black, or they don't look at Hispanics as being Black, and we are.
Do you feel like that's because we have a lighter pigmentation, and so it's almost harder to, not for necessarily for us to identify with the Black community, but almost be accepted into the Black community because we don't necessarily have the features or the pigmentation of our skin?
Well, I think it's a couple things. I think one, I think it's because I'm a second generation from the Dominican Republic. When I was a little girl, I lived there. I wasn't born there, but my father was. So I feel like, our roots are so close that we almost feel tied to our country of origin rather than where our ancestors were from. And then two, like you said, the color of our skin. There's a lot of racism within America, but for some people, they may not know there's a lot of racism in the Dominican Republic. And it's due to the fact of the color of your skin, and that's the basis only. If you go to DR and you're a certain color, they'll ask you for your papers because they'll assume you're Haitian. So wow. We have our own racism going on that we need to work on in the DR, just as we do here in the US.
Yeah, very true. Ronnie, thank you for sharing, by the way. Ronnie, how are you feeling about the Black Lives Matter movement, and how is this affecting you, and what is your mood entering today's society?
It's affecting me like I think all around, you know, when you do your day-to-day stuff and you realize there's like a blockage, it's because there's that blockage in your mind because you are seeing, of course, everything that's going on, and you're doing as much as you can to lend your support, to be a part of the support, to be a part of the movement, to be a part of the voice. But I find, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, I find that there's days throughout these weeks. I mean, this movement is not a new movement, but there's days within these couple of weeks where you almost hit a wall. Am I the only one? I have done that, and it's just we have to remember that hitting that wall is natural because it's a tough situation that we're at hand. You know, there's a bit of dealing with this situation and trying to bring equality, which should be a basic human right. It should be, but we're doing that amongst the adversity of, you know, a very Twitter happy pretend president, and it makes things really difficult. So I just hope that in these times that we could all, at least us, do our best to like keep the unity. You know, I want to make sure that we do focus on that and not divide within ourselves even. You know what I mean? Because the other side of the aisle, let's say, they they probably hate us all. You know what I mean? Regardless of what color we are, what as you said, pigmentation we identify with, et cetera, et cetera. Not identify with, but you know. So
that
I want to make
sure that we're subject
they
to
don't see it
because of that.
They don't see a difference at all. So I think it's important.
Exactly.
That's what I've been trying to do, is just like really put focus on how I can help this movement. And I guess that's a short-term answer, or you know, but that's what can I do within it, and what am I doing before that I'd like to correct, and what am I doing future that I am going to, of course, implement into my life, because it's draining, you know, especially like this was a month. June was Pride Month, you know, and that sort of is not the focus, naturally speaking. So I just want when you think about the old movements, like I love the liberation that was the women's movement and the gay liberation movement, and right now the focus is the Black Lives Matter movement, and I think we should all bond that together, and a lot of people are, so that's really exciting. But to say that it doesn't knock us down, yeah, there's days you wake up, you're like, what is going on? This is really hard on the heart for everybody, but you know, it's just sad, I guess.
Or it's almost what's another step that I can take forward to help push my fellow brothers and sisters that we're fighting for, right? Now piggybacking off of the Donald Trump statement that you were just saying.
I just called him the pretend president. I'm not political, but I
do want to get into that. I don't necessarily like discussing politics at the dinner table. However, this ain't the dinner table, right? So let's get into that for a second. There's so many people that back this president that say he's not racist. So let's just start with that for a second. Even if we wanted to believe that he wasn't racist, there's something to be said if someone can say, look at me, because I've had this happen before at the Grove in Los Angeles. I hope you have your papers. Get ready because you're going back to Mexico. And then they're yelling Trump, 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 Trump. After they state that, there's a reason why that community of the Republican side and the extreme right is really shouting that name after they're spewing out racist hatred towards any other nationality besides their own. Now, I don't know if you guys have dealt with that, but I think, especially with a 16-year high of hate crimes since he stepped into office, it has been a high of 16 years. This is crazy. We are in 2020. There's no reason for that whatsoever. But for me, it's troubling not to see that people can't correlate the two. What are your guys' views on that?
Well, I would like to say that, one, no racist is going to come out and say, yes, I'm a racist.
True.
So, you know, I think some people are waiting for him to say that to really solidify, okay, I guess he is a racist. But I think nobody's going to say it, but I think it's your actions. And I've watched many documentaries. You know, for instance, he went to court because he owned a bunch of high-end real estate condos, and he would not rent them out, even if the minorities that were applying for the apartments or condos had, good credit scores. They were financially stable enough. If they were, a minority, they would write C on their application for colored. To not rent that to them. So this is why he went to court. And he made a verbal statement to one of the women that worked for him, and, getting applications for people for the condos. He said to her, well, you wouldn't want to live with them either. So that's just one incident, when he's calling, those thugs, those hoodlums, there's so many instances where we can see that he is a racist. And just because, I've known people who say, well, I'm not a racist. I have people in my family that are minorities, or,
that's one of the biggest statements that bugs me in life. That has nothing to do with your attitudes and your racist attitude.
Exactly.
Yes.
Or I'm not a racist because I date an exotic woman. I would say a lot of racists, you will see, they will have an exotic woman on their side, yet have a Confederate flag on their car. So
you can go back to the Vistiviano incident with that whole thing. She was a minority, yet she was dating a racist.
Yeah, and it happens all the time. I think for me, I think for those type of men, they almost get off to those type of women. I feel like
and I can see that.
Like I can have anything I want, even your woman, you know? That's how I see it.
And Ronnie, how are you feeling about our president?
Well, I think both of you have explained it very eloquently, which is good, because it's really just about communication in this stage. There is something to, I think, what Fallon said, which is people don't want to be called racist, almost more than they don't mind their actions being racist, right? So the word is like this big triggering word. And I was in the situation that I was in when this gentleman, or this thug was elected president, was I was working in Arizona radio. So that was much more of the red situation. Obviously, it's not that as much today, but there's still huge influences. So I was very much a bit of an oddball, and I was on the radio every single day, and I was talking about Kaepernick. I mean, you would just talk about things that were not what they were used to talking about. And this was just a pop radio station, by the way. And they just ridiculed me. They really just didn't enjoy it. And that is when I learned, quote unquote, what we're kind of saying, that other side, which is like, I don't want to be called racist, but they didn't mind if their actions were. So I think that's the one thing that we need to do. Not we need to do, because again, like, why do we need to do the work per se? But just keep that in mind, that sometimes they have no problem with their actions, but if you click with that word, they're not even going to hear the words that are coming out of your mouth. So if you're somebody who has great communication skills and you're trying to convey a point to them, you may have to leave that word on the back burner if you want to get your message across. I know that's not fair. I get it, but it is something that needs to be done. And I had situations like that because, again, I was working Arizona radio. I actually lost my job the day that the pretend president was inaugurated, and the show, was myself, and it was, I was very, I guess, more the liberal guy. And the day he was inaugurated is when I got cut, lost my job. And that is when the reshifting of the commercials for the promo for the next week was, we're going to bring back a radio station for you, Arizona. We're going to make radio great again. And they put a bunch of Trump pictures on the Instagram.
What is making America great again?
But also that too. Like, why? I'm not making any proclamation saying I lost my job because of it, but it was real cute. You were able to have Ronnie be the greatest morning show radio personality Arizona has ever seen for the duration of that year. But the moment he became elected in November, then all of a sudden the guy who's talking about Kaepernick is irrelevant. Not irrelevant, but whatever the case. And I wrote it out. It was a disgusting experience, you just couldn't say anything. Those people are very much tied to their opinion. So that was very hurtful. To lose your job on the day that he's inaugurated is one thing, but to know that they're doing a nod like that hey everybody, we're a Trump type radio station. It sucked. It really, really did.
Well, I want to get into what sparked the protest, which was the officer who kneeled on George Floyd's neck, which then I think that was really the feather on the camel's back that really just broke it. Because I know for myself, I'm tired of the Black community being hounded after, as well as the Latino community being hounded after, especially after this president has stepped into office. And then this week we have Rashad Brooks. We do have a video of this. We do want to warn everyone. It is graphic in nature, and if you're uncomfortable with this, we ask that you look away. However, we encourage that you watch it because this is the reality of today's society in America. And our producers are going to go ahead and play that, and then Fallon and Ronnie will talk about it.
You've had too much to drink to be driving, so put your hands behind your back for me. Yep, put your hands behind your back.
So this is where he's getting detained, and then it kind of pans to the sky for a minute. But he was caught in a drive-through, having been under suspicion of drunk driving.
Yeah.
Stop fighting! You got fucking taser. Oh, 63.
And now it's showing the dash cam from the police officer's vehicle. And that's the end of that video. So there's a point where the officer says he has my taser. Now, with that being said, there's other video out there that he's stating they want to talk to him. We just want to talk to you. You were asleep in the drive-thru. He says, I can park my car right here. He's already out of his car. I can walk down to my sister's house. It's 2 blocks away. It's not very far. Then the officers are persistent about incriminating him to what I feel. I feel like they were trying to incriminate him by getting him to make statements to subject him to a guilty verdict if it were to go to court for DUI. Now, did they use excessive force? I believe so. Absolutely, 100%. There's no reason to shoot any individual, even if they do have a taser. A taser is not a deadly weapon to an officer. If you really need to fight off someone who's putting you at risk with a taser, you have a baton. There are 2 complete, distinct, different weapons. There's a baton and there's a firearm. Now, do I think that they needed either one of those? No, because there's video of people just pulling the taser out and they're completely 100% fine. And they have a bulletproof vest on. So even if it did hit the officer, it probably wouldn't even made its way through or punctured any portion of the officer. Yeah. Now, what did you guys think when you heard of this story this week?
I think even going off the beginning of that clip, or as you were speaking about, the challenging part is we shouldn't even have to get to the point where the taser was a situation for this young man. Like why is there such, well, not why, we know why, this is why we're protesting, but why is it so different based on the color of your skin with those, being pulled over for that situation? And yet, I know it's been said 100 times online, but let's still bring it up. The gentleman who goes in and shoots up the white kid who shoots up the church or whatnot, like gets to go to Burger King. Like, I mean, it is just so black and white, if I may, on the treatment, So it's kind of like, what came first? Like, did this guy tase the officer? that's not
No.
really how the story played out. I mean, I understand the actual logistics, yes, but the story didn't necessarily play out as that. He was minding his business. He was doing what he was doing. It just sucks. I didn't even know how we were going to explain all of this stuff, but it's extremely hurtful, and I'm doing everything in my power to just get the communication out there to whoever needs to hear it. Try to explain, because
Here's the thing.
I would be terrified. Like I would be even in Fallon's situation, Fallon has children, and you have a black child, a mixed black child. Like these are the things that I don't know how early you do teach the kids these things. Like this is what you're gonna have to encounter your entire life. It sucks for us to know and identify our privilege is value. And I don't have words, Russell. This stuff sucks. It really does.
It does. And what really gets me about this, and I tear up when I think about things like this, is for the fact that he was not only, you've seen his car. He was in a white Camry. I have a Camry. My Camry looks more suspicious than his. I have a blacked out Camry. There's a reason why I haven't put a Raider sticker or a Cowboy sticker or a Dodger sticker. Not saying that represents anything. However, there is a large Mexican community that follows them. And in my community, you will be pulled over if you have that sticker on the back of your vehicle. So there's a reason why I have no stickers on my car. He had a white Camry. He's a well-dressed, clean-cut man. When the conversation that you watch between him and the officers, if anything, he's slightly slurring his words, stating that he's like, I don't want no trouble. I can just walk home. It's not a big deal. So at that point, this was your chance as an officer to even say, you know what, man, the car's parked. Let's just get you home. You don't know. There wasn't even an attempt to have a conversation with him about, hey man, are you okay? Is everything all right? We've all had those moments where we go out and we do a little more than we should because of whatever we're going through in life. There was no sense of humanity towards him in that sense.
Yeah, and I wonder
officers.
what the vetting process is for the officers. Like now that we're getting to this other page where we're tearing the wall down on everything. Let's learn everything. Let's get to it all. I mean, it's been sort of proven, I guess you would say, that, who's to say these people aren't have this discriminatory background, and now you get to use a badge and force on your side with no repercussions. Like that's a scary freaking thing. So let's even explore that ideology as well.
A lot of officers in my neighborhood were C and D students throughout high school that I personally know. And now they're walking around my community with a badge and a gun. And it's like, it's like little educated.
It's little dick syndrome all over again. I mean, my gosh, now you're the big bad wolf. Like, please, it's disgusting. And this abuse of power has got to stop. I don't know.
Fallon, I want to hear from you before we cut to this next clip, because, and I don't want to apologize for being emotional, because in the world that I'm in the company that I work for, I have so many friends of diverse backgrounds, and I love each and every one of them. And we spend hours upon hours getting to know each other, not even knowing each other. And we're just all thrown into this pot together because I work with different people constantly. And my love for them is just so big. And I would hate for anything to approach them and hurt their families and have them at risk, because they're just such good people. Now, with that being said, Fallon, I want to hear your takes on this video and about Rashad.
Wow. For me, it hits home because I live in Georgia. And, so many times I'm out and about with my husband. We're jogging the streets together. We're getting food together, so, it's scary to think that a minor situation like that could get escalated so quickly. But I wanted to tell a story of when I first moved to Georgia. I moved here 2 years ago. And this is when I realized how real it is here deep in the South.
Mhm.
So I've lived many places. I've lived in Dubai, I lived in Dominican Republic, I lived in California, Massachusetts. So I've been around, many different cultures and religions and many different things. So the first week that I moved here, I had gotten a call from my friend and she said, hey, we can't hang out. I got to pick up my father. He's going to stay. I said, is everything okay? She said, yeah, but there's a KKK rally this weekend and it's by his house. And I said, a what? And she said, a KKK rally. I said, that is still around? Like, I was
Mhm.
so confused. The next day when I picked up the paper, yes, indeed, it was 2018, there was a KKK rally. And that same day, they found a young Black boy, teenager, hung from MLK Boulevard, and it was ruled out as suicide. So when I tell you, here in the South, people might say, hi, y'all, how you doing? But behind that Southern charm, there is a lot of old
Embedded racism.
I go to the gym and I see tons of Confederate flags on the cars. I was shocked. Being in California, it's so diverse, it's so open, it's so welcoming. To live in a place where I thought, some people like to call Atlanta Chocolate City. I thought okay, this is gonna be kind of like Cali, and it's not.
What's
And it
funny is
doesn't matter how.
I think I was living there at that time because I lived in Atlanta for several months.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And that story sounds fairly familiar. But I do understand where you're coming from with the racism in the South, because having lived there several months, I encountered that myself. And
it's on a whole nother level.
It is. And I actually had somebody swat at me because she didn't like what I was saying. And I had to take 2 deep breaths, 3 deep breaths, because I tell you, when my attitude spikes, because racism is something that I don't tolerate.
Yeah.
I really had to take a step back and be like, let me just compose myself, because
Yeah.
clearly she's 70 and she was uneducated and
Yeah.
she's very ignorant, and she's
Yeah.
gonna have this attitude towards me. Now, before we get into this conversation now,
No, but that is a very realization. As you're talking about Atlanta, that was the same with me, where I grew up in LA, lived a lot of years in New York too, but the one year I was in Arizona, it was a bit of a shock, just by the way they're gun toting and they feel the way they feel. It was a big eye opener. It's not saying you can't have great people in Georgia, you can't have great people in Arizona, but it's a culture shock to know that there are so many people that do think a certain way. They won't call themselves racist, but they will act as such. So it's something we have to nip in the bud. We've got to nip it in the bud each and every moment. You know what I'm saying? Like, when they're like, this shouldn't, right now is the moment for sure for the protest, but we need to also be like verbally swatting people. I remember when I was working in that Arizona radio station, and there was a couple of coworkers that just said some outlandish stuff, and some of them would use it in a way where they would say, oh, well, my husband says this, and they would give me all these like completely racist commentary.
Yeah.
And I would use
but that's my
that
husband's thoughts.
Right. And whatever. Maybe they were trying to jump on the other side of the aisle and hear me, which was actually kind of beautiful, I guess.
Mhm.
But I remember I took that moment to say, well, it's a coworker, so I can't smack the coworker.
Yeah.
But I took that time, and it hurt my emotions. I remember that, because it was just such a shock, because again, LA, New York, I lived in Vegas also for a year. But the point is, I was like, well, I have to diplomatically, is that the word? I have to cordially, communicate. And I was like, well, I'm going to just take the information she gives so I could learn. It wasn't just her, it was more than one people in the radio station, and grab it, understand it, because it's so shocking to us that there is these viewpoints so heavily on the other side. And then I would say, okay, well, think of this perspective. And I would just lay it out so beautifully. And some days I like to think that was my greatest form of communication, being in a city that I did not like, when I was forced to be on the radio every single day, when particularly that market did not like liberal, left wing type, they didn't like the Mexican American, they didn't like the gay boy, they didn't like that type of stuff. So I had to do my due diligence to use my communication to verbally, sort of swat back and really do my best education. So my point to that is we have to do it each and every day. The protest, yes, let's go heavy, but also keep that energy the entire duration of what you're working on.
You know what I think? I think I was sitting back and trying to kind of rack my brain. Why is it now that everybody, we've seen this many years ago, you know, Black Lives Matters, this is not new. We've been seeing this for years and years. So why now? And I think this was the first time where we were not distracted. We were at home during a pandemic. We were already at our lowest, hearing of all these deaths from coronaviruses and business owners losing their businesses. And, you know, so many things just happened from the coronavirus pandemic that we were home and we had no other choice but to
pay attention.
And to pay attention and to let it sink in and to deal with it. And I think this is what we needed.
Say that again, just in case anybody missed, because that was the moment that our viewers need to hear right there, what you just said. Go ahead and repeat that.
This is the moment that we needed because we couldn't escape ourselves. We had to sit home in our thoughts, in our feelings, and watch video after video with no place to escape of all these murders for, you know, innocent, you know, even if some of them weren't so innocent, nobody deserves to lose their lives over a fake check that was $100 or $10, or for being drunk and, you know, sleeping in a parking lot. I feel like that gives no reasoning behind of taking someone's life. So I think it was us sitting in that moment and not being able to escape it and having to really say, okay, enough is enough.
Yeah, like
with that being said,
open lens. Yeah.
Let's get to this second video because that goes directly with what you're saying, and this is what we were seeing face to face. And our producer is going to put this up right now.
Get off the fucking ground now! Get off the ground! Put your feet, your hands, put your hands on your back now! Get on the ground! Get off the ground! Get off the ground!
Mind you, this is a Caucasian individual who the officer is trying to detain.
Dude, get on the ground.
Mind you, that's posing a threat to him. Same kind of car. It's a Camry. A taxi officer.
He's chasing the taser didn't phase him. He's gonna shoot him. He's gonna shoot. Oh shit!
Officer falls.
He's trying not to use his gun. Shoot his tires out. Shoot his tire out. He gonna kill himself. Oh, here come the helicopter. Yeah, that's helicopter. Here they come. Shoot his tires out, dude. Don't let him drive away. Oh, he gonna kill himself. Oh, watch out!
Second officer pulls up.
He's running. Oh, he would have been killed him.
Okay, now with this video, same kind of car, Caucasian individual attacks a police officer. Police officer falls with a raised taser, not a gun, never shoots. This is a solo incident between this officer and this Caucasian individual versus with Rashad Brooks. There was two officers and one individual. So two officers to fight off one person if they absolutely had to. This Caucasian individual was one. He gets back in the car, destruction of public property by running his vehicle into the police vehicle while the other officer is on their way. At no point whatsoever does this officer even try to shoot. When he had a clear shot multiple times, and you can hear on the back end of the camera, the couple that's recording says, man, if he's black, he would have been shot a long time ago. And the husband or boyfriend or friend that was with the woman agreed. Because as we've seen during the corona pandemic, watching all these lives fall as victims to officers and police brutality, it wasn't anywhere but in our face. So we couldn't omit it, because that wasn't a choice this time, which I think 2020 has been great for that. It's thrown a lot of things in our face that needed to be addressed, and this was one of them.
Yeah, you can't argue that out. You know what I mean? It's just a complete set of standards or differences that is displayed time and time again. Not to mention, what if you were to just identify this as one simple thing, Black Lives Matter and the policing? What if you were to just identify on that, and you still, like I said, talking with other people when I had to work in Arizona, what if you still like sat behind it and owned your like racism, I guess, and were like, oh, well, this, you know, and you argued it out, right? It's, I mean, what more proof do you need? You know what I mean? Like, what more do you need? And it's not even to say that it's just this policing situation. You know, it's just every step of the way, from the mass incarceration to the segregation to slavery itself. Like, what more? Like, I mean, reparations are in need, I think. Not in need, you know, like let's, if we're gonna peel the onion back, let's peel it back even further. Like, I mean, people in this country have been maneuvering pretty well considering the injustices that are going on. But if we're going to take it to a level of protest, and we got a president who's saying some very inflammatory things, we're going to have to peel it back completely. You know, we're all in this situation because, you know, someone else's rights is a human rights. And like you said, Russell, earlier, you got all these friends that are different backgrounds. And, you know, it hits home a lot more in that regard, because this could happen to literally somebody you love dearly. And it's been happening, so it is very, very creepy. And
Black men and women are 2.5 times more likely to get arrested than a Caucasian individual.
And also,
those
I
are
think
the statistics.
I know there's another comment that's been going around, but we should definitely make mention of it too. Is like, remember how I said earlier, like, obviously this is right now the forefront is the Black Lives Matter movement, but thinking back on past movements, you know, it is beneficial when the women's movement met with the gay liberation movement, and they sort of maneuvered together to a degree. San Francisco in the late 70s, stuff of that nature. It was 60s. I think one thing we have to do, because this has been coming up quite a bit, we see from our trans sisters talking about, you know, there's trans women that are also getting killed, and there is no commentary, there's no outrage. So we have to be in this, but we also got to be on the human rights level, you know, make sure that we are
absolutely
hopefully making sure every injustice is cut. Like, and you know what, by the way, one little comment that I got with the side eye is, I don't like when you'll hear like the Fox News types or whatever, they'll be like, oh, a social justice warriors, and they kind of like make fun of that. Let me tell you something. No one's a social justice warrior. You're a social justice because that is what needs to be done to balance out the playing field. You want to throw that warrior name around like some kind of a joke, you're a joke. You know what I mean? So,
I mean, Fox News hosts are on a whole nother level of just, we're just going to say uneducated. Because there's one thing for being opinionated, but you need to be able, as a public personality and as a news host and as a news anchor, you need to be able to look at both sides of the spectrum, give an even thought on both sides, and then choose your lane. Yeah.
I went to school for broadcast journalism, and that's like number one. Like, you're supposed to report unbiased, but the problem is that these networks have owners that are either left or right, so they don't want their news channels to be unbiased.
Right,
yeah.
And it's also news, you know, wasn't always this, but news has become a for-profit situation. So now it's that concept of whatever year it was that the term, if it bleeds, it leads. Whenever that term came out, we're like at that level times 150. And my worry to us as humans and as a society is, how much more are we going to keep upping the ante? Like right now, you got like a Candace Owens who, you know, builds a career off inflammatory comments, and I sometimes wonder, like, how does she go to bed at night? How does she sleep at night? But like that bank account is huge. So like,
it is.
She's probably someone we're seeing, and it's quite disgusting at times. I do think she's brilliant. I will say it, like, she's a smart girl. Like,
very intelligent.
I do understand aspects of how she communicates, but I wonder, like, how do you go to bed at night when you are probably, I can't speak for the gal, but you're probably either A, speaking against your own interests, but B, you're speaking against what you actually feel, but you know that what you say will generate book sales, will generate television appearances and college tours or whatever it is. And at some point, I think you just have to go to bed at night and be proud of what you do. And I don't know these people are proud of what they do. And the sad thing is Candace Owens is probably going to be chump change compared to the next person who's going to keep elevating. Because you see the problem that I'm learning that
Candace
we're
Owens
having.
probably doesn't even make anywhere close to what Tommy Lauren does.
Oh, well,
And
that's
Candace
another-
Owens is actually educated, which is the sad part. And Tommy Lauren actually just has a big mouth and just shouts out things to the left-hand side. And when Candace Owens is actually throwing out statistics and numbers, which her and T.I. had a conversation not too long ago, and T.I. is extreme left and Candace is extreme. Well, she's not right, and she's not undecided, but she's in the middle. But she's anti-Democrat, pretty much. Now, with that being said, I don't want to get too far off topic because this is a podcast about JLo. So JLo actually was out protesting in West Hollywood with A-Rod, and she actually surprisingly had minimal security. On her Instagram, she stated that Max and Emmy were talking about the Black Lives Matter movement, and it actually perfectly aligned with what she was getting ready to do, which was go out and protest. And so they actually made the sign which she was carrying. How did you guys feel about that? Because JLo has faced scrutiny in the past, which we can also get to that next episode, because this is definitely a conversation that is we're going to keep peeling back over these next few weeks.
I loved seeing her, and I know like the scrutiny you were talking about prior, but again, I think there's some people when they say things, it's coming from a wrong place.
Exactly.
And with JLo, it's coming from a good place. She wanted to be inclusive, but people had to check her, and we all get checked sometime, but look at her, she was protesting. So I felt like, her heart was in the right place. And I love the fact that she's willing to protest without, I would rather she not protest. We need her around. She could protest on Twitter, but Portia, she got tear gassed when she protested, and it's you got to be careful. But I do give her props for being so bold to go and do it.
Well, what's funny is that all these celebrities were out there during these protests when the rubber bullets were flying, when the tear gas was being thrown. I'm sure their security team sweep them away faster than fast. However, they were still out in the front lines, but there was the KKK protest and not one bullet was fired, not one tear gas can was thrown.
That's because the KKK has all the police. A lot of policemen are KKK. So
and that has there's something to be said about that.
Yeah, they're not going to attack their own people.
Well, you know what?
I'm not saying that all policemen are KKK, but especially here in Georgia, there's a lot.
With that being said, Chris Rock made a statement that said, we can't just have 90%, I believe you said 90 or 99% of cops that are good cops, because your husband being a pilot, you can relate to this. We can't just have 99 or 90% of pilots that say, oh yeah, we'll fly safely and land safely. And then the other 10% or 1% say, oh yeah, we'll fly into a hill, or we'll fly into a mountain, or
we're going to drink and fly.
Yeah, we'll drink and fly, because, most of our pilots are great. There's certain jobs where we just can't have that.
Well, and I don't think we have to stay on the message. We can't let others who don't agree with the message take it so far away. When Kaepernick is kneeling, that's a peaceful protest, right? And then it becomes a anti-flag, which was never the issue. That was never the issue. Well, and so sometimes I worry that, we can't let the message be, not that it's our decision, but these other people will hijack the message, so that's one thing that's super important, is to stay on brand and really hammer down what the struggle and the fight is. Regarding her protesting and any celebrities, my thoughts are this, and regarding, like you said, past issues or whatnot, I said it earlier, I don't think the other side, whatever you want to classify as the other side, I'm not even doing anything to be raw or rude to anyone else who has different beliefs than me. But what I will say is, for the most part, they really hold and stick together. They hold and stick together. And they do kind of look at y'all as they don't like any of us, right? So
Mhm.
I get very weary when I could understand it, because we're all in this like almost like toxic situation of trying to, you know, create equality for us and standing up for each other. You know, I get worried when that collective tears each other down. You know what I mean? That's why I make mentions earlier. I was like, well, if we're pushing for Black Lives Matter, please don't leave out our Black trans sisters. You know, like pull up everything versus cutting everything. Because what's going to happen is then you're not going to necessarily have the unit that you're going to need to fight this fight. And I do understand that there are some celebrities that are kind of just coming in and they're not necessarily as attached. But sometimes I would rather just at least have their voices also being out there, you know, like with like someone like a Taylor Swift. I don't know that her audience is exposed to this issue as much. And then you have Taylor Swift, who has her privilege, and it's just like, I got to put it out there because it does bug me and I need some changes to happen, and she'll be able to lose fans because of it, and she's drawing a line. So I think it's important. I just don't want too many people to cut each other. Like, for instance, like she just mentioned Housewives. Portia Williams is not a fan. I'm not a fan of Portia Williams as a character on the Housewives, but I will never say anything bad about what she's doing. She's using her voice, and I was quite proud of what she did as far as her advocacy and protesting out over there in Atlanta. So that's what I'm saying. Get your, almost for us that are in this fight together on a human level, get your head out your butt and stop cutting each other down, because we need all hands on deck. Do you see what I'm saying? And I get sick to my stomach if anyone tries to come for, it's not about JLo, but tries to come for anyone. One of the AfterBuzz hosts, she said, end quote, not Todrick, I tap dance for white people Hall. He's a performer. And it was a read. It was a good read. Drew, Russell, I know you know who that was. And while Todrick is somebody who necessarily hasn't really always done the right thing for his fellow man, I would say, I still don't want to make sure we cut these people down, because we need everyone in the fight together. So.
We do.
Yeah.
We do have to wrap soon. Fallon, can we hear some of your final thoughts? And then Ronnie, we'll go back to your final thoughts, and then we'll come to me. And then after you're done rapping, you can go and tell people where to find you, because we've all been very boisterous over these past few weeks as well.
Final thoughts: get educated. You know, find a way that you can use your voice. It doesn't have to be protesting. Maybe it's you have a big social media following, or maybe it's just in your family. You may see that there's racism in your family, and having those hard conversations. And you can find me online at fitwithfallon.com or at fitwithfallon on Instagram.
Yeah,
Ronnie.
and I just want to use this time to use the duality and even the privilege that I have, you know, Mexican-American gay male, like I have different privileges, and I just want to make sure that I'm out there being as advocate and as vocal in things that are important to me, and cutting it at the head, you know, right away in day-to-day life, not just like when it's like protest time. But I also want to be smart where when I see people who are colleagues or old friends or even family members, where when I see that they're not necessarily in it and they're not necessarily supporting, I want to make sure that I don't rail against them too crazy, because I could see that they're on the fence. And I think maybe sometimes I've wondered about where my broadcast career is supposed to go and what my real message is. I'm learning that at this stage of my life, my broadcast career is more about my communication career. And I think I'm on this earth to communicate well. And there was a friend of mine older friend, that we sort of distanced off, but this gentleman, particularly at one stage of his life, was the white kid, you know, married an immigrant woman, and he was very much this white kid who spoke Spanish. And as the years have changed and as the country's changed, he's become much more the other side, we'll say. So I made sure we had a conversation, because I was like, I'm not going to tear the kid down if he is actually trying, but I wanted to definitely put the spotlight on this is who you're supporting, you know, and this is what I see. And I don't know, you guys, I just think that's a very hokey way to think about things, but it was something that I tried to do with each and every person if that opportunity arises.
Where can everyone find you so that you can continue to enlighten them on this?
In the back alley, having a three-way as usual. No,
You are
a dirty boy.
What is your Instagram?
Sorry, randomlyronniejr.com, links to everything. Thank you.
Guys, we are going to continue having this conversation. We're going to piggyback off of this next week. Have those uncomfortable conversations with your friends who don't understand what it's like to be segregated or out by other friends and family, for the fact that this is an important time for change. No matter how big or how small your movements are at this point, whether you're out protesting or you're making phone calls or you're donating to a cause which you believe is fighting back towards police brutality or the injustice of Black lives or any minority lives or trans brothers and sisters, please do those things. No matter how big or small, we're all moving towards the right direction as long as we're making a move. And with that being said, you can find me at Russell Ray Silva on Instagram or russellraysilva.com. We're going to continue talking about these uncomfortable moments throughout the week, and then we're going to pick right back up with the conversation that we were having today with Ronnie and Fallon, including Todrick and Privilege, as well as JLo. With that being said, we'll buzz you guys later, and we'll see you here next week.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.